Hey, Trailblazers. Okay, so it's Wednesday. I just want to post a little instructions just in case, again, your internet was lagging or you missed something during class today. So it is Wednesday. Our goal today is for you to be able to explain and describe the causes and effect of reforms during the Gilded Age. You're going to do this on a digital poster on Friday, and also in your immigrant postcard home. And so this is more information that you can add to your postcard that you started yesterday. So today our goal is to really look at the workplace. Our warm-up was just to highlight. We're going to practice a skill of highlighting and exploring in the slide deck. So just a reminder, if you highlight and right click, you can explore, and this opens an internet search window here. And so this will give you like the definition. So you could like open a tab straight from your slide deck that gives you the definition of what a muckraker is. So just scrolling through Wikipedia, what is a muckraker? And then we went over what the political cartoon here is. You'll notice that this is Theodore Roosevelt. You were introduced to him in your reading notes this week. And there's the White House out here. And Roosevelt is holding his nose because it's super stinky. It's gross. This is called the meat scandal. And we're going to learn about the meat scandal today. And he's got his rake, and he's raking through the muck, the nasty, smelly, there's skulls in here, and nasty bacteria, and just disgustingness. And he's he's being a muckraker here. Roosevelt is. And again, Roosevelt's our president, Theodore Roosevelt, at this time during the Progressive Era. Okay, then we're going to move on again, we're focusing this week or today on what it was like to work during the Gilded Age and in the Progressive Era. And so we're going to do two examples of factory life. And this first factory life, this is textiles. So that is a textile mill. This is one of the most popular jobs during the Gilded Age and the Progressive Era. It is making cloth or sewing clothes. And so this example is the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. There are two videos that you're going to watch. And just before you watch it, basically this, again, it's a factory. So pay attention not only to the story, but the things that are universal to all textile factories. Who was working there? What was work like there? What were they making? Oh, they were making a shirtwaist. So what is a shirtwaist? Oh, it's a women's shirt that comes down and gets tucked into a skirt. And so this is a shirt waist. There's an example here. After you watch both videos, you're going to be answering the question, what made this fire such a tragedy? What kind of people did you see working in the factories? Why did so many people die in the factory? So what was happening in that factory and in factories all across New York City, Chicago, all the big cities that made it so when there was a fire like this, and this was not the only one, this is just one example of a fire, that so many people died in here. And then what was the result of this tragic fire? So what changes were made because of this fire? So this is what this slide was. We spent about a good 20 minutes on this, watching the videos and discussing the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire as an example of the types of conditions that women especially were working in during the Gilded Age and the Progressive Era, and then what the progressives, again, especially women, began to fight for. What changes got made because these progressives were fighting big businesses to change or reform the way their factories were. Okay, the next half of class was focused on another example of what work life was like. This example was focused on the meat packing industry. So this is a lot of in Chicago specifically, and in all across the United States, in the big cities, there was always a meat packing district. That is where they slaughtered animals and packed them up to be shipped out as ground beef or sausage or steaks or roasts or ribs or whatever. And so in this example, we have what it was like to work in a meat packing factory. And we look at this through the lens of a book. This book was written by muckraker Upton Sinclair. The book was called The Jungle. This whole book, extra credit if you want to read the book, you can check it out from the library. This whole book was about this Lithuanian immigrant, so immigrant from Eastern Europe in a country called Lithuania. His name was Jurgis. And this whole book was about Jurgis's life and his work in the factory packing meat. Okay, so in this book, Upton Sinclair really explores, he's a super good descriptor of coming to America and what the immigrants' life was like and where they lived, and the fact there was 6 to 10 people living in this small house. So Jurgis and his family, and how every person in the family had to go get a job to be able to pay the rent for this small place. Then it goes in the story, it starts talking about what it was like in this meat packing factory. It describes how unsanitary it was and unsafe, and how people would die in the factory, and then their bodies would get like chopped up and like get sent out in the meat. Rats were everywhere, and the rats again would die and then just get put in the meat. Sometimes they would try to poison the rats to get the rats to go away, and then now the poison and the poisoned rats just get put into the meat hoppers. The hopper is like the big vat with the blades in it that chops all the meat up, and then it's pushed out through like tubes and packaged into sausage and into ground beef. They would boil the bones of like the cows to get the bones clean, and people would, and the fat that came off the bones would then be like skimmed off to create lard. Lard is like manteca, right? It's the stuff that you use to, it's oil. Lard is. And so you have these men who are boiling the bones to get the lard out, and the conditions were super unsanitary, and it was really slippery in there, and they would like fall into these vats and die, the men, and then their bones would just get boiled with it. And so you have like people fat and animal fat going out into the lard. So many things were exposed in this book, like what it was like to be an immigrant, where they lived, what the factory is like, the unsanitary conditions, not just for the workers, but also the consumer. So the people who were buying this stuff didn't even know that this is what was happening in the factories. And so this book like uncovered so much corruption within the big businesses, again, for mistreating their workers, but also consumer safety. It opened a can of worms, so to speak. And so you were to watch this video on The Jungle and explore these slides. And inside these slides, I assigned, basically you had to pick 5 of the 10 and read the quote from the book and identify like what's the problem, like what's the nastiness, and then what's a way that you could potentially fix it. And you had to write inside your slides, and then you're going to post those things on a Padlet. And I put the Padlet in the chat. And so for you though, you can just type right into your slide deck, and then you'll attach your slide deck to this assignment at the end of the week. Okay, from there, we went into, so what was the impact? So The Jungle, up to the President of the United States, when this book came out, when it got written, he was just like, oh, heck no. And so right away, well, not right away, but by 1906, Congress had passed something called the Pure Food and Drug Act, which began to set regulations on consumer goods. So not only what the factories did to create the stuff, but then the inspection piece before it was sold. And I'm not saying that it fixed all the problems, but it definitely began to fix the problems. And we have the FDA today, the Food and Drug Administration, that checks all the stuff that gets sent into our grocery stores. The FDA, that was created during this time too. So a committee to check a law that created that committee. And then there was another law called the Meat Inspection Act that was specifically focused on meat. Now the Pure Food and Drug Act, if you read your reading notes, that had to do with food, and also like different drugs that were sold. So like cough syrup and cough drops and just anything really that would be a drug that would help you when you were sick. So they were putting like narcotics in these things. So like cocaine in cough drops, opium, which is where heroin gets it's the drug for heroin, that was put in like cough syrup. And so people were getting like addicted to these over-the-counter drugs during this time period. It created a huge medical problem. So that was kind of where we were today. And then we stopped and I gave you more time to write your postcard. So you are, again, if you watched the last video, you're writing a postcard home, you're creating a character, an immigrant, and in your letter home, you're telling us what it was like on the ship, what it was like to pass through the immigration station. Did you come to the East Coast or the West Coast? So were you from China or from Europe? Where did you find housing? Where did you find a job? What it was like to work in this job. So yesterday you got started on the postcard and now you have more information to add to the postcard. So you may want to change the story a little bit, maybe add a little bit. I worked in a textile factory, or I worked in a meat packing factory, now that you know more specific things about both of those industries, and that's totally fine. So firm up that story in your postcard, because that's going to be your written assessment, this story. And I want a good story. Like I'm talking, give me a good half page to a page story about your immigrant. And if that means that you need to add another slide so that your story fits, that's totally fine. No problem at all. Okay, so that was it for today, and I'll see you next time.